Hello, and welcome to this fourth in a series of 4 episodes hosted by the Community Energy for Energy Solidarity Project, or CEES, as it is commonly known. Over the past month, we've looked at a few different things like how do you identify and engage with vulnerable households? How do you identify and engage with other partners in the community to help people in vulnerability? We've also looked at how do you actually take practical action to help people in vulnerability. And today what we wanted to do is look more at what we call the support side, the financing and policy frameworks that need to be in place in order for energy communities to effectively help people in energy poverty. And so we've called today's sessions Creating an Ecosystem to Sustain Action. And we are going to dive right in. As I keep talking and give you the logistics, we're going to run a little slide deck in case you don't know about CEES. It'll give you an introduction to some of our key themes. And what we're talking about is the element of support for efforts to tackle energy poverty through community energy. And the support theme in the CEES framework covers both policy and finance. What do you need for policy external? What government policy or maybe municipal policy do you need to operate effectively? But we're also going to talk a little bit today about what kinds of policies you might need to put in place inside your organization in order to tackle energy poverty through community energy. And quite a few of our partners have focused on new mechanisms for financing their efforts to tackle energy poverty. So we're also going to dive into that. And we hope to, over the course of the next hour and a half, really look at very many different aspects of what we would call an ecosystem to support tackling energy poverty. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Marilyn Smith. I'm the founder of the Energy Action Project, and we report on who is doing what to tackle energy poverty from policy, financing, technology, and social and cultural aspects, primarily through our website, Cold at Home. But in CEES, we have the role of the communications and dissemination partner. It's been a terrific opportunity for us to learn more about community energy and who is doing work in this area. We do want to have the chat very active, so please drop your name and organization into the chat while I'm talking away here, and feel free to put in comments or suggestions or links to information that you know is relevant as the other people are presenting. We do, as I said, we want this to be a very active chat in the background. So CEES comes out of the EU Green Deal identifies energy communities as critical to the just clean energy transition and to tackling energy poverty. But it's really clear that there's some systems that are not yet in place to support that on a really wide scale. So CEES is 9 partners who are building up knowledge and experience in both practical aspects of delivering services to vulnerable households, as well as investigating this aspect of policy frameworks that help or hinder their activities, and probing the very challenging aspect of how do you finance this kind of work. And everybody working in CEES over the last year to do pilots has found that it is really resource intensive from the human resources perspective. And so it does require additional financing to bring this aspect of tackling energy poverty into a community energy business model. Each of the CEES partners had to agree to pilot something that was completely new to their operations that would ultimately help vulnerable households. One of the first things CEES did was a survey to see how many community energy projects in Europe were tackling energy poverty or were interested in doing it. And we had a nice response. We had about 100 organizations answer the survey, but of those, really only about 15% were actively tackling energy poverty and 85% were looking to bring this into their operations or to do it in a more effective way. And so they've been following CEES quite closely. Coming up next year, we are currently working on what we call the Energy Solidarity Toolkit, which will reflect the experiences we've had and provide advice and tools for community energy groups that want to do this in the coming years. And hopefully we will be able to help you do that more efficiently, having learned on some experiences. We have flipped the usual webinar presentation format, and we are going to hear from four, I think three, hopefully four. We have one person who is tied up in an important meeting. Hopefully we'll hear from four CEES partners, then we'll have a Q&A session. And we are also hoping that Selco Foundation from India will join us towards the end of this webinar, so you can hear them present about their efforts to build up the ecosystem for tackling energy poverty with the very poorest rural communities in India. And again, we're just hoping they're going to come online. They've not been able to respond to us this morning for some reason, so we're going to keep reaching out to them and hopefully have them come online. If not, we will do a separate recording from them afterwards and distribute it to everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. Please, again, do put your name and who you are into the chat session. And we're going to start with Enercoup and Kentan Gerard. And I wanted Enercoup to present in this session, particularly because they are an energy cooperative that has been around quite a while and tackling energy poverty a little bit, but through the CEES project, doing it in a much more operational way. So Kentan, I'm going to pass it over to you and let you talk about what that meant for you, both internally and externally, if you have both of those perspectives for us.
Okay, hello everyone. I will try to speak not that much about all the subjects that you're interested in. So I'm gonna share my screen. So I'm Quentin Géraud from Enercop, and I will talk to you about the Enercop's commitment against energy poverty. And I will also talk about what the French public policies had related to the impact for the subject about fighting against energy poverty. So first, just to give you a little context, I will present to you Enercop, which is a French cooperative created 15 years ago, and essentially which is an energy supplier in France, but we also are a producer of energy, of renewable energy. We do have like almost 100,000 clients, of which 84,000 households in our clients. And we do have 160 employees, but only in Paris, I mean, who goes for the supplier mission, because we are actually a network of local cooperatives in all the regions of France, and yeah, we basically created ourselves as an energy supplier, renewable energy supplier, but from years we now present ourselves as an actor for the energy transition. And we also work now on energy savings services. And this is in this part that we, for example, work on some European project like the CEES project. Okay, so basically I will first talk to you about how Enercop decided to involve itself more in the fight against energy poverty. And then I will talk to you about the impacts of the French national policies. You'll see that some helped us in a way, and other ones kind of complicated the subject. All right. So first, just a little thing to say that Enercop is a network of local cooperative, and since the beginning, since the creation, we decided to make the energy a common good, and our mantra was like energy by all and for all. And so since the beginning, we wanted to make the energy at a cost that can be affordable for everyone. So since the beginning, the fight against energy poverty was a challenge for us. But yeah, we took some years to really work on it. And a few years ago, so it was about 10 years ago, we created a new structure which called Énergie Solidaire, which basically I will talk about it later, but it's an endowment fund to collect money from our clients to redirect them towards solidarity associations. NRCOP, it's like almost about 10 years too, is member of the Rappel network, which is a national network of all the actors that commit themselves to the fight against energy poverty. And we are also a member of the co-chair. Basically, it's about we provide financial support for the work, and we participate to the decisions of the network, and basically we are really engaged in the subject. NRCOP also has an advocacy department that works on lots of subjects, but we do work on energy solidarity. And I will give you some more details just in a few minutes. And recently, since we engage in the CEES project, we made current work on the creation of a solidarity task force to support our customers in situation of energy poverty. And just to say a few words about that, it's the pilot that we do within the CEES project, and it consists with our recovery debt department and with our customer relationship department to better identify our clients that potentially are in a situation of energy poverty, and to orientate them towards our help, and then towards the competent actors, for example, in order for the clients to have some grants, public grants, to help them, or to renovate the houses, some kind of stuff. And also it's like unofficial, but I wanted to talk to you about, because to me it's a really important subject related to the fight against energy poverty. We actually worked on two solidarity offer. So that means the clients that we identify like in situation of energy poverty could benefit in the year 24 from a discount of the tariff, or the NRCOPS tariff. Well, we do have some little subjects, but since I have to talk to you about the most important things, I will go on. So yeah, we created Énergie Solidaire around 2010. And as I was saying about, it's an endowment fund which is dedicated to energy solidarity. So basically, we finance this legal entity, and we are developing with them some innovative forms of donation, especially the micro donation system. It's basically on the bill of every NRCOPS clients. The clients do have the opportunity to give some more money, and to support local associations. And these local associations are working on the combat of energy poverty. So I let some digits. We have around 4,000 clients that are what we call micro donators, and we gather more than 200,000 euros, and it was collected by 10 associations, and we are pursuing this process, and it's really important to us. Okay. Okay, so now I can talk to you about the context of the national policies, public policies. So I basically decided to talk first about which policies help us, and then I will talk about the other ones. So in France, we do have, related to other European countries, we do have a certain amount of laws that concerns energy solidarity. And so, for example, we have the energy check, which is basically a check which the clients with low income households can benefit from. And so basically, this identification, because it's an energy supplier that send the energy check to the clients, it allows us to identify, not it's partially because not every client who do have the energy check is in situation of energy poverty, but it definitely allowed us to identify a big amount of our clients in situation of energy poverty. We do have some, as an energy supplier, some obligations relating to the winter truss. For example, we can't cut the electricity of the households that benefit from the energy check. And we do have to set up some scheduled payments for example, for the clients that do have a lot of debts, or who got some low income households. So basically, this law helped us in a way that our recovery debt department had to make an effort to work on these schedule payments, and who had to change their way of speaking with the clients. So that kind of helped us to put a foot, like I would say in France, in the subject. And also we have more recently we had to set up a remote display solution for the precarious consumers. And so basically it's an application that we developed which allows to the clients to track the energy savings that they can do when they do some eco gestures that we recommend to do. Okay, so basically the national policies that helped us were all about we have to work as an energy supplier, how to identify and how to help the clients. And basically it allowed us to go deeper go deeper than the obligations. Because actually, if we really want to fight against energy poverty, we really do have to make more. And regarding to the national policies that complicated our task, basically it was about some laws that are mainly indicated for the big energy suppliers. And since we are not really a big energy supplier, it's about firming some contract with all the departments, like 100 in France. And it's really complicated for us because we do have a juridical department of 3 people. So to make a convention, an agreement with all departments is really complicated. And also we do have, as an energy supplier, to have a solidarity poverty correspondent, which is basically supposed to make the link between all the social workers of all the departments, and also who is supposed to provide a file with the contacts of all the clients that struggle with their energy bills to the departments. And so basically we do not have at all the time and the energy to do this kind of settlements. So basically, these are some obligations that are really important. I mean, we want to work on this subject and we want to finance the Housing Solidarity Fund with all departments, and we also want to identify better as an energy supplier and make the link with all the social actors that work against energy poverty. But as a small player, if we can say that, it's really complicated to fill in these obligations. Here I am. I hope I was not too long. Thank you for listening. And Marilyn, I don't know if we take the questions now.
Yes, we're going to do the CEES presentations and then have a Q&A. But if anybody has a question that they don't want to forget about, feel free to pop it into the chat and Kantan can look at it and be ready to answer it when the Q&A comes up. So now we're going to take you to, thank you for the presentation, Kantan, it was super interesting. And now we're going to take you to Portugal, where Copernico is similar in that it operates as an energy community that puts systems onto buildings and generates energy, and is relatively new to tackling energy poverty. So we're going to hear from Ana Rita, and I'll just give the floor to you, Ana Rita.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. So what Copernico, as you told, is a supplier, is the only cooperative supplying energy in all country in Portugal. And we started as a producer in decentralized way, in the decentralized model. But what we want to share with you today is our work on policy, and specifically on policy on energy poverty. So in Portugal, it's not so easy to work with other entities and to work for a common vision or common position on something. But Copernico thinks it's important to work with the other stakeholders, because as Quentin was saying, we are not only suppliers or producers in cooperatives. We want to have better policies on energy sector and for the citizens. So this makes sense to work with other entities, and what I'm going to present in a very brief way is our work. It was work for months on the public consultation on national strategy for mitigation of energy poverty in Portugal. So in this slide, you can see the entities with whom we work on this policy position. So Zero, it's the environmental NGO, the biggest environmental NGO in Portugal. DECO is the Consumers Association. And then you have ENA, Lisboa Nova, S Energy, and RENAI. RENAI is the National Network of Energy Agencies, and S Energia, ENA, and Lisboa Nova are regional or municipal energy agencies. And then you have Sense, Nova, ICS, Observa, that they are universities and that with work on energy poverty. So put together all these entities, sometimes it's not quite easy, or it's not so easy as you imagine. So the first challenge is the alignment of different positions and different views on energy poverty. It could be could be obviously obvious for all of us that we all want to fight energy poverty, but when we read a government program to fight energy poverty, maybe there are some differences between there are some differences of position and the views of the sector that we cannot align on the same on the same subject or on the same paper. For example, I can give you the example from Copernico. So the social tariff for electricity in Portugal is not paid by the government, it's paid by the sector, it's paid by the producers. And this is this can be a problem because in the end of the year, or in the end of the day, or in the end of the year, the money that the producers are paying to have the social tariff working in Portugal maybe is going to be shared by the other consumers. So this can be a problem. So Copernico, as a producer and as a supplier, we advocate that the social tariff should be paid by the government because it's a social support for the citizens. And for example, to consumer association, they don't want to know, they don't care where the money is coming from. They just want to have the money for social tariff. This is the kind of tricky, or the kind of balance that you need to have between the different the different entities when you are when you want to have a common position about something. And that was our main job, to have this common position on the national program for energy poverty. But we made it in the end. We made it. Other thing that we discussed on this program, it was the difference between where should we put the public money when we want to fight the energy poverty. For example, in Portugal, you have now public funds. Some of them are national, some of them are European funds, to put solar PV in your rooftop to self-consumption. And we advocate on this paper, on this common paper, if the public money is not enough for all the citizens, so maybe we should direct this public money to whom is on energy poverty, or to the citizens that don't have money to pay their own self-consumption self-consumption
systems.
is that photovoltaic or items. So we need to, and the other thing that we discuss on this paper is to prioritize passive measures in the way that in Portugal Portugal is known by our weather, quite good weather compared with the rest of Europe, but the reality of our households is much different. We suffer a lot of coolness in our households and in our maybe what we try to advocate in this paper is if we have in Portugal buildings, Class A buildings for all the citizens and all the families, maybe we didn't have the necessity to have a social tariff or other measures, because it's I believe that in Portugal the energy poverty is really related to the quality of the buildings, and we should start from there to tackle energy poverty instead of paying social tariff. So this was the kind of the discussions that we had in this group, and it was months of meetings, not full-time meetings, of course, but it was months of discussions to have this common paper. But in the end, I think it's good to have it because it's completely different when you submit to the government a position of your own, or a position for 10 very well-known entities recognized by their own job. And so it's and you start to work when you start to work with the other entities, in the end you are going to get a framework to work on other issues and other problems and other projects, and that's good. One of the things that we and it's good and it's positive. One of the things that we suggest to the government is to have a place where all the entities that are working on energy poverty can join and can discuss how to tackle this problem for the next years. It's not a question of publishing national program. You need to work on this issue in a long way, and it's going to be a long way to tackle. So I think this was the main things that Copernico wants to share with you. I want to pass to João to complement, to add to what I said now.
As Ana Rita said, there's more strength in these common positions, but then that there's always this very interesting exchange, and we can really understand others' perspectives because we are working all for a common purpose. But even though, since we do different kinds of work, we have different perspectives on things, so we can really understand what others are going through.
All right. Thank you. As we just said a moment ago, we'll save the Q&A until after the last of the CEES presentations. So now I'm going to hand over to Paula Damaska, checking in from Croatia, where the situation is more complicated because there is no legislation on energy poverty. So, Paula, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Okay, hi, everyone. So I'm Paula from the Green Energy Cooperative in Croatia. Just a bit of an intro, even though I hope most of you are following us from the start of the webinars. So we are a social enterprise. We have 20 members that come from all fields. Mostly they are engineers, but there are a few of us from social studies. Basically, what we do besides conducting EU projects that deal with the democratization of energy and renewable energy, we do have a turnkey approach in implementation of solar plants, which means that we have our network of partners, which allow us to make it simpler for citizens to get to renewable energy through our network of installers, of project designers, suppliers, and the funding opportunities that we inform the citizens about. Uh, yeah, for our experience in the energy poverty theme and sector, we do have some experience in our previous projects, such as electrification of rural areas in Croatia and good leadership. The first one allowed us to intervene with the energy poor and energy vulnerable households in Croatia living in remote parts of Croatia where there are problems with getting the energy through the infrastructure that is faulty over there because it's expensive to get it to some areas. And through the Good Energy Social Entrepreneurship, we developed some educational materials that came in handy in this project that we needed to adjust a bit and to update with new energy prices. We converted to euro in the meantime. And yes, but it was a good foundation for our work through CEES. So as the partners already said, the idea of CEES is to replicate the models that are successful case studies in other pilot countries. So we have had the privilege to try to test and replicate the ENERCOP model that you've heard about already. So yes, here the main elements are basically the donations to the Social Solidarity Fund. So users are enabled to donate their excess energy, to donate money by rounding up the bills, and to just donate through a donation button. Here we did come across a few challenges. The first one being that we are not an energy supplier, so it's not as easy for us to replicate this because we have to rely on other partners and stakeholders and decision makers in this energy sector, which is quite it's quite a time to be making such propositions since the energy crisis and the prices going up. So yes, we did meet with the energy suppliers here in Croatia, with the biggest one and a few of the smaller ones. So the bigger ones gave us feedback on this effort that their systems are a bit hard to change because they're quite big and there are a lot of users and clients. And the even bigger challenge was the price of electricity and gas going up. So to set up a pilot where we ask their users to round out the bills and make them by this even bigger, they said that this probably wouldn't make them look good in the midst of the energy crisis. The second thing here may be good to mention regarding the policy in Croatia in 2015, the biggest suppliers signed an agreement of energy suppliers, which by which they agreed to pay the solidarity fee. So before then, there was a fee in the amount of 0.003 cents for every kilowatt hour of electricity spent that month, and the users used to contribute with this fee. But since 2015, all the energy suppliers agreed that they would discount this amount for all their users and that they will pay this fee. This fee also goes to the fund that compensates then the endangered energy buyers with energy vouchers. So once we detangled all of these processes and had meetings with all the energy suppliers, we concluded that we should maybe adjust our approach and try to replicate the model or the case study from ENERCOP by splitting our microdonation campaign into two parts. The first one was public and targeted at the citizens. So here we wanted to go to the target group that is the citizens that is also involved in the Enercop model by rounding up the bills and giving the excess electricity. So here we invited them to raise awareness about energy poverty and to donate micro donations on the account. And also in the other phase, we went to socially responsible companies and asked them also to micro donate or to match the amount of money we raised from the citizens. So from this slide, you can see that we did it. We did collect the targeted amount from the citizens, and almost we are still in the action part of our pilot. So we are still trying to collect the residual money from the social responsible companies. So yes, I already mentioned that we did the public campaign and an invitation to donate. So here maybe it's good to concentrate on how we did it. First of all, we collaborated or partnered up with Solidarna Foundation or Solidarity Foundation here in Croatia, which is a foundation that collects donations for quite some time now. And in 2015, no, not 2015, like 2 years ago, we had a big earthquake here in Zagreb, and they were the first one to activate a fund to collect money to repair the houses and everything. So they became quite well known within the Croatian context. And we thought that maybe it would be better, since we usually don't do micro donation collections. We're not a registered foundation. So we thought that it would be maybe smart to collaborate with someone who the citizen know, who the citizen trusts, and who the citizen maybe did donate to before. So here on the left side, you can see a snippet from the Solidarna Foundation website and our Is There Troubles campaign. This is what we named it. And on the right side, you can see one of the visuals that we made for our website to invite people to donate. Here also you can see one of the visuals for how they can donate. And here I thought that this was maybe that this would come in useful for maybe organizations that didn't do donation campaigns before. This is kind of the template or the draft of the mail that we did, which we sent as an invitation to donate to the socially responsible companies. So we envisioned it in the first paragraph was why we are doing it. So who are the vulnerable and what they're vulnerable, and what is energy poverty, like main informations about the context, why we are making this campaign, what is our goal, what we have achieved so far. Here we referenced the citizens campaign part, and we gave them options. So what we thought was smart was to not make them think a lot about how much they will donate, but to offer them options, and in the same time tell them what we are gonna do, where this will be visible, and in which way they can make it visible on their sites too, that they have enrolled in this donation campaign. Also information until when they can join, who has joined so far, and what follows after the collection, where we talk about what the money will be obviously used for, and what there are next steps in alleviating energy poverty. So here we basically talk about the following, that our end users are older, those citizens older than 65 years, the beneficiaries of National Allowance for the Elderly, minimum guaranteed compensation. So basically the financially vulnerable citizens that are older and that have, why the older? Because they have chronic disease, which makes it even harder for them to endure the consequences of energy poverty in their households, but also because statistically they are the ones most affected by poverty vulnerability. So the money was used to buy these energy efficiency packages. These are the elements of the energy efficiency packages and how we are distributing them. This is using our educated energy advisors. Those are volunteers who offered to help us, went through a education that was consisted by 3 big modules. First one concentrating on the context of energy poverty in the EU and Croatia, energy efficiency, which is a big part of energy poverty, and the campaign, and step by step by how to and what to do in the household affected by energy poverty. So yes, I think I managed to say everything that I wanted.
Thank you, Paula. Now we're going to go to Normandy in the north of France, where the number of houses that are in really poor condition is quite high. And Sabrine from Les Sept Ventes is going to tell us about how 3SR renovation works and what challenges they have encountered during their pilot in relation specifically to policy and financing. So Sabrine, I'll give the floor to you.
Hello, Marlene. Thank you. So I will share my screen. I'm working in the context of the CEES project on the supported and shared self-renovation. And our experimentation consists of participative work sites and trying to find some solutions about financing of this practice. First, presentation of Les Sept Ventes. We are a non-profit small and medium organization. It's a social enterprise of 32 persons. It has been created as an association in 1998. Our main activities are studies, technical and social studies sometimes, training, advice and support for communities and individuals. Main fields of work we have is in construction and energy and sustainable development. The 3SR practice is renovation work that is done by a group of volunteers, and it's supervised by a professional, and the owner of the house or the occupier of the house participates in this renovation. The idea behind this practice is to improve the housing conditions. So it can be about energy efficiency, but it can be also about the general aspect of the building, the comfort of the building, and the use of natural materials in the renovation. The main definition for energy poverty in the national context is to say that a person in energy poverty is a person that has difficulties to have energy necessary for the satisfaction of her main needs and more basic needs with the reason of either the inadequation between the building state or building situation and the resources that the person has to reach her comfort or basic needs. So we have tried to base our experimentation on this definition to identify people in energy poverty. And it was quite challenging at the beginning because as we have a France Rénov point of contact, we can't go and make some advertising about our work, and we can't go to reach the people by ourselves. We have to work with people that come and ask for energy advice. So the general approach of our pilot was to identify these potential beneficiaries. And if we find some people that can be considered in energy poverty and are willing to go for a 3SR approach, we then have a phone call with them to do a pre-diagnosis about the situation and confirm that we can go for the experimentation with them. And after this, there's a diagnosis that has been done at the house for the estimation of the rehabilitation work and the cost of it. And the other part of our experimentation was about the diversification of funding sources for this practice. And this was really the most interesting part and also the most challenging for us. So the main difficulties that we have encountered in the identification step was the fact that most of the households that are in energy poverty in France are in rental housing. That the fact, it's less linked to our experimentation. It was interesting that we have 50% of the rental housing that belongs to only 3.5% of the households in France. And this just shows the inequality in the building market, and shows how much it's difficult for the people in energy poverty in rental to ask for help counseling from the outside. We know that a lot of people just fear of requesting an energy efficiency diagnosis for their house, just because they think that the owner will refuse to renew their lease. In the same context, we know that 20% of rental homes are in F or G energy rating in France. This means that they will not be allowed to still be rented with the new legislation coming. And this is why many landlords ask for the possibilities they have to renovate the building they own, but a lot of them are also thinking about just stopping the renting by year and making some Airbnbs and things like this, because it doesn't impact the energy efficiency conditions for them. About the rental part, it didn't impact us that much because in Normandy we have special context. And this context is that we have bigger in share of owners in the households locally. So many people in energy poverty are owners, and they have much difficulties in doing the renovation necessary for their houses. So we tried to find these people in our territory in Normandy and in La Manche more particularly. So in this context, we had also obstacles in the coordination of TRISR works and stakeholders in local context. And much of it that has come is the insurability of this site of works. The works itself, the insurances still don't understand the practice, and some of them just won't insure the works that have been done. And I just shared some of the problems that we have encountered, but we know that most of the professionals and the stakeholders just find solutions to go through these difficulties, and they adapt using some words and not others on the bills and on all the paper that has to be produced during the practice. The aid schemes also have some challenges for us, and the TRISR practices are not integrated in the aid schemes. We have some exceptions in Normandy where you can integrate some parts of the CEES in the aid scheme. And this has as an objective also to encourage the use of eco-materials. And this is because most of the people that work on CEES are in the eco-materials idea in their practice. The last part of our experimentation was about financing. And this part, we have found two main problems in our approach. The first one is that our status, so SIC, is not adapted to the tax deduction policy. We can't. Many of the people that were aiming to make some donations are not really motivated to do so, and the roundup in checkout tools are difficult to apply with the small businesses that we targeted in our experimentation, and we don't have many big shops that can integrate this tool easily in the region. So this is the main problem that we are facing now, and we are trying to find some solutions, and we hope that we can share about this in the beginning of 2024. So this is the main subject we had to share with you today. And if you have any questions, you have our contact of me and my colleague working on this.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. It's really interesting to hear for us from a very specific project that is doing renovation now. This is I think you're the only one in CEES that's doing this, so it's been a really different process for you. And thanks for sharing what has been interesting to learn and challenging for you to implement. We are quickly going to hear from Kevin Burchell from University of Birmingham, who is going to talk to us about some of the evaluation mechanisms one can use to assess how their project is going or how their campaign is going. And so, Kevin, I'm going to ask you to dive through this quite quickly so that we do have some time for Q&A before we pass on to our invited presenter.
Sure. Well, it's good to see everyone again. Thanks for joining the webinar. Yeah, so I'm just going to make a few comments about some of the things we've been doing in CEES in terms of evaluating the work that our colleagues have done on fundraising. And I would like to add the caveat that this is very much in financial terms a non-technical approach. So it is the sort of thing that that anyone can have a go at with a bit of thought. You don't need to be an accountant or some sort of financial whiz to do this. So I'll just offer a few, apologies for that, I'll just offer a few ideas for objectives in this area, questions and methods. And those of you who've been here over the past few weeks will recognize this structure. There is also a slide deck of broad-based principles for evaluation, and those will be available as well after the webinars. So, it's pretty simple. I think what we're trying to do here is, in terms of objectives, is understand that the processes that went through, and I think Paula gave some very good examples of the processes that she went through, and then the impacts of that work, and that was all there in what Paula said as well. And of course, the purpose of all of this is to improve and refine what we're doing. So first of all, in terms of the process and looking at questions, we would want to know what the plans were in advance, what kinds of approaches were being considered, public donations, perhaps, micro donations, corporate donations, and so on. And then we would want to ask what were the successes and what were the challenges that were experienced in the implementation of those plans, and what changes were made as a result of all of that. In terms of the impacts, obviously, we would want to know something about how much money was raised through each fundraising activity, perhaps relative to the objectives over time. But also, I think it would, I think we found it quite helpful to think about what have been the relationships between the amount of effort in terms of resources and time and so on that's needed to set up a particular way of doing things, and the amounts of money that's been raised. And in the context of CEES, that's very much what we'll be focusing on between now and the end of the evaluation period. And so in terms of methods, I think, obviously monitoring and record keeping, keeping a note of all of the actual financial information, the money raised. And then, of course, in terms of the processes, you can find out a lot about that by having discussions with the people who are actually doing that work. And that's very much what we'll be doing in CEES. And that's it. So thanks very much for that. And I'll hand back to Marilyn.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin. And thanks. I know that you probably would have had more things to say if we were not running short of time. So thank you for being.
That's no problem at all.
Okay, great. So we've heard from a few CEES partners, and I just want to give a chance for anybody to ask questions or make comments. Is there anybody visiting us with us today or participating that would like to ask a specific question of one of the presenters, or just a general question, or even make a comment based on your own experience? have a hand raised from, sorry, I don't see who it is.
It's Nina.
Nina, please go ahead.
Thank you for those presentations. Really interesting to hear a bit more detail about what you're all doing. And I've got lots of questions actually, but just to go for one, I was interested listening to Quentin from Energy Co-op about the policies in France, in particular about the winter truce, which I presume is a ban on disconnections or other sort of debt collecting activities. Maybe you could say more about that. But if I'm assuming correctly, my question was, what is actually Energy Co-op's approach to disconnection beyond winter or in general? And if anyone else wants to speak to that.
Yeah, I can begin, even if I don't have some really precise answers, since I'm not working at all on all the supplying activity of ENERCOP. But basically about the winter truce, it's about, I don't know if it exists in other countries, but it basically consists of during about 4 months, I mean the coldest ones, we can't cut off electricity until a certain level of, because we do have like power subscription or something like that. I don't know if it's correct in English, but we can downgrade the clients, but not until a certain amount of power, which is like okay to live in a decent way. I mean, in not that much. You can use your hand dryer and like all the different electric objects that you have in your house in the same time. But basically, it's only about this national legal obligation for all the energy suppliers. During 4 months of winter, we can't we can't cut the electricity off all the households. It's not about regarding to the income level of income. It's like for everyone. I don't know if I was that clear, so you can re-ask the question.
No, that did answer the question. I guess perhaps you're not the right person to speak to the point on sort of what effect does that policy have on Energy Co-op's approach to disconnection in general. I guess that's where I was where my thought was going, is does a policy like that encourage a more careful approach with disconnections in general? But yeah, I'll save that for unless you can speak to that, but perhaps a different team.
Yeah.
But thank you for the information about the policy though.
Yeah, and what I'll do afterwards is I have both your emails, so I'll put you in touch with each other, and maybe Quentin, you can help Nina follow up with
Sure.
someone else
That'd be
within.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on then to our invited presenter today, and I'm super excited to have Surabi, and I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name because I'll get it wrong, but please do that when you come on live, who is from Selco Foundation in India. And I've been following Selco Foundation for, I don't know, maybe about 10 years already, 8 or 10 years. And what I find incredibly interesting about them is that they've recognized how much work it is to, once you've developed an efficient technology, how much work it is to get it out there in a very big way, and the huge effort that needs to go into building up what they refer to as the ecosystem for scaling up innovative solutions in the developing countries, particularly in India, and now they're working more in Africa. So, Surabi, I'm going to let you take the floor, and I know that you have some PowerPoints to share with us as well, but maybe you can just start by introducing yourself and saying a little bit more about Selco Foundation.
Sure. Thank you so much, Marilyn. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And maybe just a quick background. My name is Surabi, and I've been with Selco Foundation since 2011. A lot of my background is in environmental policy and regulation, so very much aligned with a lot of the people who are probably here or the kind of work that you've been doing. Selco Foundation as an organization started in 2010, and our focus has been to look at inclusive innovation and, as Marilyn pointed out, ecosystem building for the sector while looking at implementation of decentralized sustainable energy solutions. Of course, the context that we come from is probably a little bit different because the energy circumstances in a country like India are different from what European countries are seeing. Often regulations don't really exist when you look at the decentralized clean energy space. And it has taken us a little bit of time and learning to really understand how can we institutionalize some of these solutions, not by focusing solely on energy policy, but rather by focusing on rural livelihoods and health development policies. So making energy a really cross-cutting kind of emphasizing its catalytic role. So if I can just present my screen, I think when we're talking about the need for sustainable energy in the Indian context, it's really coming from a mix of one level of the fact that there's a lot of drudgery and inconvenience in activities that are being undertaken. So it's kind of stepping back 2 levels to even say, why do we need to talk about sustainable energy at all? And there's a lack of mechanization in that process. Labor is assumed to be free or cheap. And so a lot of agriculture activities undertaken by small and marginal farmers, as well as by micro businesses, is largely manual. And so you have a lack of mechanization itself. Now, where there is mechanization, we find that electricity access in the country is officially we have 100% electrified places. However, the reality on the ground is that the official definition doesn't take into consideration hamlets that are further away, and it doesn't assure 24/7 electricity. So you end up with a situation where you have potentially mechanized solutions, but irregular power supply, and therefore you are dependent on backup fuels like diesel in order to look at regularity. And the last aspect is we are particularly interested in the decentralized aspect of this because both from a geographic and a climatic point of view, India has hilly terrains, forested regions, regions that are remote, hamlets that are outside of the town center, where access to electricity just through a mainstream grid is inefficient and unreliable. So building incomes on the ground and creating those safety nets on the ground are actually better when you decentralize the energy source itself. And the broader effect of all of this being looking at long-term resilience building. Where there is mechanization, one of the big challenges is that mechanization tends to exist for larger scale appliances. So for example, when you think of something like rice milling or millet processing or micro businesses that are working on spice grinding, these are often equipment that are really large and not really designed for a decentralized scale. Because electricity availability has been restricted to a centralized level. So for us, when we started to look at sustainable energy, it has been driven by a longer term effort that a social Selco India, which is a social enterprise that was set up in 1995, was looking at, which is how do you look at decentralized solar energy for last mile households. And with the start of Selco Foundation, we started to look at it more as a challenge of innovating in terms of appliances, in terms of financing, in terms of business models for these solutions, and building that ecosystem such that the solutions that are implemented are actually sustainable on the ground and reliable over time. And increasingly for us, these solutions are actually very relevant when you look at both climate adaptation and future mitigation. These are households, small businesses, farmer producer groups that may not be consuming energy today because they're doing manual activities, but at some point have to move that direction because development requires that mechanization. And unless we're able to put them on sustainable energy solutions today, you're actually creating future emissions in the long term. So we don't look at, for us, the sustainable energy component comes in both from a development perspective as well as a climate resilience building perspective for these communities themselves. So we are talking about energy then as a link for all of the other sustainable development goals. And I think this is not unfamiliar in the group that we're referring to. And broadly, when we talk about it, we're actually talking about three infrastructure pieces, right? So it's the clean energy system itself, which is your solar panel, the battery, the inverter. The efficient appliance. And the challenge, as I was mentioning, was that a lot of work is happening manually, which means there's very little mechanization at the small scale. So looking at efficient technologies that can support mechanization has been something that we've had to look at and work on with local manufacturers, because appliances are either very large scale and because electricity itself, because it doesn't take into the cost of production and transmission, has been cheaper. So there has never been an incentive to innovate on efficient appliances. You know, we still joke about the fact that you have 5-star ratings on appliances like refrigerators and air conditioners, when you should only have 5 stars. Like, why are those first 3-star appliances even around in the world we're living in? Because it doesn't make sense from an optimization or a cost perspective. And this becomes particularly true when you're designing these solar energy systems for appliances. And the third component is the green built environment. So I'll give you the example of, you know, a home-based worker who is making local snacks. This person is living in a house come workspace which may have a tin sheet roof, which would probably lack lighting and ventilation. So when you first start talking about an energy system, they're saying, I need to switch on the light for 12 hours in the day and run the fan for 12 hours in the day, not even counting the appliances. Whereas the reality is that if you improve the built environment, bring in lighting, natural lighting, bring in ventilation, change the materials to thermally insulating materials, you can actually then be talking about designing the clean energy system for 4 hours in the day and having natural lighting and ventilation through the rest of the day. So the green built environment piece really bolsters the work that we are looking at around energy solutions and optimizing the infrastructure for a particular requirement. We bring these solutions together for 4 livelihood sectors: agriculture, animal husbandry, micro businesses, textiles and crafts, and for and for healthcare, which has now actually become quite a large part of our portfolio. And all of this we also look at it from a thematic lens with our partners, which is, how do you design these solutions with keeping in mind health facilities that are in climate risk areas, that are in flood prone areas, right? How do you design these solutions for micro businesses that need to be operated by differently abled people? So there are thematic aspects where we bring in aspects of vulnerability and climate risk and disaster in order to be able to look at solutions in an appropriate manner. And broadly, we have these components of the ecosystem that we're working very closely with partners on to bring together. So I already spoke a little bit about the innovation in infrastructure and technology, which is the 3 components of the clean energy system, the efficient appliance, and the built environment. But how do you plug it in with appropriate financing that is relevant for a small and marginal farmer, or for a women's self-help group, or an individual micro entrepreneur? And there you're seeing a combination of the financial institution and their loan product, what the end user may be able to contribute at one point in time, and then understanding what is the kind of gap support required. Some part of that gap support may be existing policies that are there for agriculture infrastructure improvement, and how do we unlock those to be able to finance sustainable energy solutions. And in other cases, how do we look at bringing that gap support from philanthropies, from local corporate social responsibility agencies? And India has a law that says 2% of all CSR, all corporate profits need to go towards corporate social responsibility. So it has been a space to unlock resources for sustainable energy solutions. And bringing all of this together requires us to know, to work very closely with NGOs that are NGOs, government departments that actually know sectors like agriculture and healthcare, right? So Selco Foundation itself does not work on, we don't know the ins and outs of what are the inputs and seeds and fertilizers required, or where are the market linkages for the produce that is grown by farmers. We can talk about the appliance for rice processing. But that input and market linkage and understanding what that rice processing equipment needs to look like is really something we rely a lot on local partners for. So we work very closely with NGOs that are working on agricultural best practices, that are working on input and market linkages for farmers. We work closely with government departments and nonprofits that work on healthcare, that know the healthcare system, that know how the staff are going to come in, what is the kind of vaccine supply, and then we can start to talk about what are the appliances required for good maternal care. So a lot of our inputs on what are the energy needs and what are the equipment needs come from partnering with local organizations whose expertise is in that area. And the last aspect on kind of the ecosystem itself is, how do you bring together, how do you make sure that the solution is sustainable by having local clean energy enterprises who can maintain these systems, who can install them, who can service them, especially when you start to talk about more remote terrains? And how do you build the capacity of technicians on the ground, where they're not just electricians, but they are electricians who know how to maintain solar energy systems, for example. And within this ecosystem approach, for every solution, there are broadly three phases, or rather, there are three phases in how we work. There's the phase where you innovate, where the red dot is kind of Selco Foundation's role, where we're trying to say, we try and understand what is the problem statement. For example, a very basic one, since I've been talking about processing for so long. So let's say that there are farmers who are growing millets, which are drought resilient crops in the last mile. Now, these are communities that are growing millets, that have the intent to consume millets, but cannot consume it without certain level of basic processing. The only technologies available are some centralized processing milling units, which means they have to travel 30 kilometers to process their own millets. And so they just end up sending it to a middleman and he sells it off. They then access rice or whatever other commodities are being given through the public distribution system. So when we know that that's the challenge, and we start to look at what is the technology available for millet processing at a smaller scale that could be implemented at a village level. The next linkage is, what is the financing options for this? Who are the organizations that are working on millet production and know how much millet is produced in a certain area? What are the government departments that are trying to promote millet-based diets, right? So here we're trying to benchmark the technology. We're working with manufacturers and testing solutions. We are getting feedback from end users and trying to determine how the technology can work best and what is the kind of financing requirement for this technology. The next phase is really where you're talking about scaling, where you're building linkages between those partners. So you're saying, this is the manufacturer that has appliances for millet processing at a smaller scale. This is the women self-help group that can run this as a business at a village level. This is the local government organization that is facilitating market linkages for millet processed commodities. This is the clean energy enterprise that can actually power that appliance. So bringing those connections together and designing programs where we become the agency that's linking all of the partners. And of course, the goal is really amplify at a level where we cease to exist, or we exist, but partners have built their own linkages, where, for example, our ideal would be to say that millet processing, solar-powered millet processing units become part of the agriculture scheme of a particular state, and assets for that are being promoted through the state government, and financial products exist for that through local financial institutions, right? I won't go too far. I know that I probably have 2 or 3 minutes to close. So
take your time. Take your time.
Okay. So just to say that, within the map of India, we have direct presence in the states that you see in red. These are a mix of states that are affected by droughts, that are hilly and forested terrains, and particularly in the northeast here, which are kind of the lower Himalayan region. You see a lot of forested and hilly regions where infrastructure access is a problem. So we're interested in looking at decentralization because building infrastructure here is a challenge, and that lack of energy infrastructure is really affecting development in these areas. And when we look at kind of solutions, especially when you look at agriculture and livestock, there is something around the agriculture value chain approach that we try to use to understand what kind of solutions might be relevant, right? So, for example, in the dairy value chain, you know that there are certain inputs required for cattle, and these are small and marginal farmers. So they will have anywhere between 2 to 10 cows, or poultry, backyard poultry for eggs and chicken. And here we're trying to see what are the kind of activities that require energy. Is there a mechanized solution to that? And is that solution efficient? If there isn't a mechanized solution to that, can we work with local manufacturers to design mechanized solutions for that? Right? So some of the solutions that you're looking at are hydroponics to grow green fodder with low water resources and low land requirements. And there is a solar powered water pump to be able to manage that sprinkler system for the hydroponics itself. Or you're looking at solar powered vaccination storage, because an input for from a veterinary perspective is to make sure that vaccines are provided, right? At the farm itself, milking machines are very, very common in larger farms in Europe. But when you talk about the smallholder farmer with 10 cows, it's assumed that the woman in the house will milk the cow at 5 a.m. in the morning and then at 5 p.m. in the evening, which is drudgerous and also has health risks for the cow itself, right? Mastitis and so on. At the collection and retail point, the energy requirement is more around cooling of the milk or weighing and testing the milk so farmers can be paid based on the fat content. And then at the processing level, it probably revolves around value addition for milk-based commodities. So there's an attempt to look at kind of energy from multiple angles, but especially in agriculture and livestock, there's a value chain approach that we look at for various kinds of value chain, whether it's paddy, millets, spices, and horticulture, and kind of map it in this way to understand what are the activities, what are the energy needs, where are the challenges, and can mechanization and sustainable energy solutions address those challenges. This is just to give you an example of some of those solutions, at an input level, solar powered soil testing units so that farmers are better equipped to say, what should my soil have? Sustainable irrigation, where you're not just talking about a solar water pump, but you're combining it with drip and sprinkler systems, or processing units and cold storage solutions for post-harvest management. I already spoke about some of the solutions in livestock. And then when you look at micro businesses, solar-powered refrigerators, manual activities when you're looking at silk reeling, when you're looking at pottery, where is the mechanization in that, and then how do you power that? Sorry. Since we were talking about financing and policy, I just wanted to add a quick perspective on that, which was around, when we're looking at sustainable energy for livelihoods, there is an interest to understand where will the financing come from. And there are certain challenges that are there both from the end user perspective as well as the financial institutions perspective on providing, let's say, loans for purchase of solar powered sewing machines or a solar powered millet processing unit. And we've tried to address this in certain ways where some of these are, how do you look at financial mechanisms that reduce transaction costs in remote areas? So you're covering the gap support, but from the perspective of providing transaction and admin support. In some cases, you're reducing the risk for financial institutions, but providing a risk guarantee and saying, I will give you the money that is required for the guarantee, and now can you lend to be, and we do this as an organization that has access to philanthropic capital, where we're saying we'll put down the risk guarantee, and now can you lend to 10 farmer producer organizations or 10 individual micro entrepreneurs that want to start solar powered tailoring businesses, right? In areas where you don't have existing financial institutions that have all of the access to capital, can we infuse low cost capital and allow them to on lend at a smaller interest rate? And then when you're addressing the end users' requirements, putting down interest subsidies and margin money subsidies to make that loan more affordable, or looking at viability gap support where you're covering 40% of the cost or 50% of the cost of the solution, anywhere between 10% to 50%, in order to change the affordability for the end user. And on policy level, I think our efforts are, and I won't go into all of these, but one is how do you develop inclusive policies with local governments? The other is how do you use existing policies and schemes that are there, for example, the Prime Minister's formalization of micro businesses, where people can access 50% government subsidy and 50% through a loan for starting micro businesses. So we say the 50%, that amount that you're accessing, can it be used for a solar powered asset that builds the livelihood, right? And through this, we've had about in the last 8 months, 150 entrepreneurs accessing solar powered flatbread making machines, solar powered refrigeration and milk chillers, solar powered snack making units, by unlocking existing programs for grassroots level entrepreneurs. And our end goal is, of course, to be able to see program designs where you're saying, actually, this agriculture infrastructure facility fund that is coming from the Ministry of Agriculture has a greening target, and X percentage of the budgetary allocation is only for solar powered solutions, solar powered efficient solutions that can address agri infrastructure, right? So I won't go into all of this because I think it's kind of past the time already. But I think since we mentioned health, which is an area that tends to have a place where you can't really look at financing from the end user. It has to be driven by government philanthropies and other sources. We have an Energy for Health program that is looking at solar powering 25,000 primary health facilities across the country, which combines the same efficient appliances, clean energy, and built environment for maternal and child care, immunization, and screening and basic diagnostics, where we've brought in some amount of the funding, or rather raised some amount of the funding, but we're also looking at local health funds that are there for health systems strengthening and health infrastructure strengthening to actually use here. And we're working with governments to say, how do you change your procurement policy so that you're not buying inefficient equipment? So here's the list of efficient baby warmers, efficient sterilization equipment, efficient vaccine storage devices, and bring that into the guidelines of the National Health Mission so that when procurement happens, it's already an efficient appliance. Don't procure a diesel generator. Here are the solar system guidelines for each level of health facility. So can procurement at a national level change? So we're not having to look at it individually, but whenever a health facility is going through procurement processes, they're already institutionalizing sustainable energy solutions. I'll stop with that.
Okay, we're slightly over time, so I think I will draw it to a close. But again, thank you, Surabhi. And also thank you to Kentan and Ana Rita and Joao and Paula, who some of them who have had to leave already for the presentations, and to Kevin Burchell as well. Just before you go, I am going to pop into the chat a podcast that I did with Harish Hande, who is the founder of Selco Foundation, and Gauri Singh, who was a high-level politician within India and is now at the Deputy Director General at the International Renewable Energy Agency. And the two of them are talking about this intersection between developing technology, building up the ecosystem, and then getting the policy framework in place. And it's super interesting because Harish talks about these pretty basic technologies that are reducing drudgery, and then Gauri Singh comes in and talks about how she can then, now where she is at IRENA, she can talk to energy ministers all over the world about things like a solar-powered sewing machine or a solar-powered millet grinding machine, or one of my favorites is a solar-powered roti rolling machine that really do transform people's lives, because the productivity increases threefold or fourfold, and people can either triple or quadruple their income by doing the same thing, or it can reduce their time poverty and give them time to go and do something else during the day rather than spending all day rolling rotis to sell to restaurants. So thank you, everybody. That was our last webinar for this series. And we, as I said, we've recorded this and we will put it up online in the next few days and make it available. And thank you all for participating, and do follow CEES. As I said, our toolkit is going to come out in the coming months, and we also have some open days coming up. So if you happen to be an energy community that is interested in learning more about how our partners have input their, or have rolled out their pilots over the last year, that open day is coming up on the 30th of November, and Susie's going to pop into the chat a link to register for that. It's in London. If you can make it to London, we're happy to have you there in person. If not, you can join. It's a hybrid event, and you can join in the afternoon. The morning will be a site visit to a solar plant that Repowering London is operating. So Rachel will be taking us on that tour. So again, thank you, everybody. And we will definitely, if anybody wants to be put in touch with anybody else, drop me a line and we will make sure we make the connections. And again, thank you for coming in from India, Surabhi, and giving us these really interesting insights on how you've gone about building up ecosystems and policies.